Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at gcnlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Well, we had a schedule change this week. Rich Scheben will be on tomorrow. Guineith Isaacs is on today. Back to our regular schedule next week. Nathan is engineering the broadcast in Minnesota. I'm Vincent Finelli. If you'd like to call us, 866-582-9933, 866-582-9933. And if you'd like to listen on the telephone listen lines up 24/7, 605-477-3249, 605-477-3249. Welcome, Guineith.
Hello, Vincent. How are you this morning?
Is it dark in Australia?
It's dark. it's pitch black. You know, if we have got a flat Earth, then somehow it's arranged so that the world is still dark on one half and not dark on the other half.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's great to hear your voice. You're
yeah.
Are you going to share with us what's going? Are you going to share with us what's going on with you?
Yeah. Oh gosh. You know, aren't corrupt police just so much fun? They are, aren't they?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know.
So what are they doing?
Well, there's this guy, and he's been here before once or twice, trespassing on my land. And he had a newbie with him, and he's teaching the newbie how to trespass on my land. And issuing me with, unlawful warrants and teaching him how to be a good corrupt policeman.
So what? Okay, so we quite
literally signed the warrant in the middle of my driveway. It did not come from a judge.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So we're making these things up. They're making these things up as they go along, and he quite literally signed the warrant in the middle of my driveway while I stood there watching him do it. Mm-hmm. So that's not a lawful warrant. What was?
It doesn't come from a judge, does it, Vincent? So his signature is there. So, and they said,
okay.
It just says squiggle. Doesn't say anything. Could be anyone. It turned out it was him. I only had to sign the other one too, the other copy.
All right. So now we've got the police. The police are forging a judge's signature. Well, yeah, but he's forging a judge's signature, right?
Oh, but they're identifying themselves as police, but, that's not the point. A warrant is not supposed to come from a policeman because then anything can happen. That's the reason why. Then they can excuse themselves for anything. That's why warrants are supposed to come from a judge, and they're supposed to come from a judge who is not a police officer and who actually is, probably not there. It would be pretty rare a judge to be present at the presentation of a so-called warrant, wouldn't it, Vincent?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep.
Years ago, back in the 70s, yes. Years ago, back in the 70s, I had a summer job and I worked at a stereo wholesaler's establishment. And there was a young guy who was working with me, and he just didn't cut it. And so one day, the boss came up to him and put his arm over, it was a Friday, put his arm over his shoulder and said, hey, I just want to let you know that I'm recognizing the work that you're doing here. And because of it, you deserve a vacation. As a matter of fact, a permanent vacation. As a matter of fact, you're out of here right now. Now, there's a point to that. The point to that is, it seems to me that the judge should do exactly the same thing to that policeman who forged the judge's signature on the warrant, okay, for several reasons. One, forgery, which is a crime, breaching the public trust, okay, and he should be fired simultaneously with being arrested, incarcerated, and tried for forgery and breaching the public trust and failure to do his job. So I think that's kind of a neat thing that happened, although it was, I'm sure, very, very uncomfortable. And so you have a court date that's been arranged for you, right, by this forger and trespasser?
Yeah. The thing is, the court is probably not going to be in front of a judge either, from my experience of country courts around here. So, can anyone here say set up? Can anyone here say kangaroo court? This is the fallen state of our so-called justice system here. Okay? But you know something? What they're planning is absolutely not going to work because they have forgotten something. Okay? They've forgotten a lot of things. And for all their excellence at thuggery, they're actually not that smart, which is usually the way it is with any bully. You find that they're usually not the sharpest tool in the box. Okay? They have forgotten a few things. And one of them is that if I'm booted off my land, okay, and have to find... what this is about, by the way, is so-called land rates and property taxes, okay? So, which is a whole area of fraud on its own. So they're there in my driveway. They're trespassing. I've told them to leave, and they're not leaving. They're serving me with a extortionate notice of demand, which is for me to, go and stand before a judge who's not a judge. For that judge who's not a judge to read from a script and tell me that I have to comply with another extortionate notice of demand. You know, that's only going to end up in one place, and that is the Court of Appeals. If it goes well for them, okay. If they think that everything's gone fine, it's going to end up in the Court of Appeals, okay. And from the Court of Appeals, it's going to keep on getting appealed and appealed and appealed until it ends up in the High Court of Australia. And that precedent has already been set. And I know this because I play chess and I've figured this out. Why do you think I dug my heels in? And by the way, a copy of this recording is probably going to get sent to the Victoria Police and it will end up in their inbox. Okay? That's just to make sure that they hear this. And that's probably, this broadcast is probably being monitored anyway, I would say, because I would say that most of my broadcasts are, especially the ones that deal with the police. The other thing that they have forgotten is that there are actually dead man switches operating on my life. So even if they succeeded in actually booting me off my land or actually arresting and imprisoning me, it still wouldn't go well for them, because they would become known as the cops that arrested Guineith Isaacs and had her incarcerated so that the dead man switch flung into operation, and so that a whole lot of information got released that they didn't want to be released. That's just how it is. If I vanish,
why do you?
I stop sitting on it. I stop sitting on the dead man switch, and it goes off. As long as I'm out and about in the universe, everything goes fine. You know? Yep.
Sounds to me like you just want to be left alone to live your life, which is the same thing that everyone I know wants. Everyone I know just wants to be left alone. But they won't do it. They don't know how to do it. Now, Guineith, your dead man switch has names, addresses, and events, yes?
It has names and addresses, or former addresses, of certain pedophiles who were stalking my sons, okay? That are going to, and the whole backstory. And before that, the circumstances surrounding why we had to flee to Geraldton in the first place. The whole backstory to that, which is a whole nother set of circumstances that they really do not want out there in the wild. Okay? And right now, I refuse to talk about that set of circumstances. I'll talk about it privately to family members and you don't, sort of thing.
You don't need to.
But not publicly.
You don't need to. But the point is, yeah, the point is,
information out
there is a switch. Yeah, there is a switch, and if they keep harassing you and they incarcerate you, off it goes. It's as simple as that. And what a miserable time. Guineith's with us, and Guineith, just to let you know, we have an extra long delay in transmission today. It's taking about 3 seconds or maybe a little bit more to get from me in Missouri out to GCN in Minnesota and up to the satellite and then down to you in Australia and then the return path. So I just want to let you know that that's what we're experiencing. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to wait an extra amount of time, between responding. So keep that in mind, please. Guineith, why do you think that the blue team is just making your life as difficult as they possibly can? What do you think the reason is?
Probably because I tend to stand out, I think. Probably because I am outspoken in exposing their corruption. They really, really hate that. And they, when you're a hammer and all you know how to do is hit nails on the head, somehow whenever you come across a problem, you think that it's a nail and you think you can solve that problem by hitting it on the head, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it does. It does. And, I think that a lot of the guys who were in high school that were, the bullies, have ended up on the blue team, and they've been allowed to continue their passion. And they've been given a sidearm and a taser and a shotgun and handcuffs and nylon handcuffs as well as the steel kind. And then they've been trained how to push people around, how to throw them down, how to beat them up, how to plant evidence.
And how to be more effective
they get
bullies.
Yeah. They get the on-the-job training, and then they adhere to a code of silence that they absolutely will not rout out corruption within their own team. So what happens is, I believe some people enter the blue team thinking that they can make a difference. They want to help people. And then they become caught up in the corruption. and then it just escalates and it becomes pervasive. And it's no different. It's no different from what happened in the Third Reich during World War II. No different. If you look at the Nuremberg trials, and you see the questions like, why did you commit mass murder? And I'm paraphrasing, of course. Why did you kill all these people? Well, everybody was doing it. We all got caught up in it. If you look at the individual interviews, well, we got caught up in it because Joe was doing it, Bob was doing it, Harry was doing it, Tom was doing it. I'm paraphrasing, of course. And so, I was with them, and we were all buddies, and we were in the same unit, and so we all did it. And I think that's what happens. And if you look at
orders,
just following orders,
that's
what they said. Just
and over and over and over and over and over again. Mm-hmm. Now it's interesting. When I was talking about the dead man switch, it's very interesting to. It's very important for me to note that's not a threat. Okay, and I'll tell you how it's not a threat. We have a certain plant that grows around here, okay? It's called Chinaman bush, and it's full of resin, and it's notoriously flammable. It will even burn when wet, okay? It grows to be between 3 and 6 feet tall, maybe in really good places, maybe 7 or 8 feet tall. It's notoriously flammable. And anyone who does smoke around here, which is nobody in our household but on other properties, some people do have a smoke while they're up in the paddocks working, they never ever throw their cigarette ash and their butts just randomly into a forest. You just don't do that, okay? And the reason why you just don't do that is even if it's wet, you might create a small bushfire. Okay, so I'm sitting here saying, listen, I'm trying to do my work here. Can you please not throw cigarette butts into the Chinaman bush? That's what I'm saying.
Makes sense to me. Makes sense to me.
Can you please not do that?
We'll be right back.
I'm watching somebody.
Live in Australia, Guineith Isaacs is with us. She's a farmer, lives on her own farm. And she's being harassed. Guineith, what else would you like to talk about?
What else would I like to talk about? Oh, gosh. It is pretty interesting what's happening here and how the level of tyranny generally in this state is kind of ramping up. Okay? This is all stuff that has been published in newspapers here, especially, funnily enough, especially in the Murdoch press. Okay, Rupert Murdoch, of course, comes from Australia, and he cut his teeth in this country with a newspaper that he inherited from his father, who was Keith Murdoch, which was the Adelaide Advertiser. And he now owns a whole string of newspapers all across Australia, including the Herald Sun and including the Weekly Times, okay, which is a country newspaper. And so I've found that the Murdoch press tends to present more of the truth than its competition, which is the Fairfax press. As I remember it, the Fairfax press used to be owned by Conrad Black. I don't know if he still owns it. I know that Mr. Black is still alive and out there in the universe because he was in the news a couple of weeks ago. I was kind of surprised about that because I haven't heard from him in years. But anyway, these are the sort of things that are being broadcast through the press here, that the military and the police in Australia are presently doing exercises to quote-unquote coordinate together in the event of a terrorist attack, okay? Now, I am not, absolutely not, a terrorist. I want to live in peace, okay? But when they, you know, we know this from the WikiLeaks, we know this from, what was his name, Hillary's insider that came, Larry Nichols. What Larry Nichols said a number of years ago, he said, you have to be aware that when they begin to announce these sorts of things and they say that it's in the event of terrorist attack and it's to get the terrorists, you have to be aware they're not talking about Muslims. They're talking about you, the ordinary Joe on the street. Okay? And it was published in the Herald Sun probably around about a month ago now. I could be, you know, a week or two out on that. But that they were coordinating, that the Victoria Police were coordinating, and other police forces around Australia, they're not on their own, with the Australian Army to develop exercises so that they could coordinate together in the event of a terrorist uprising or a terrorist attack, okay? Now, let me translate that for the ordinary people, okay? They're going to do a false flag, and they're going to blame it on us, and then they're going to go door to door and start, you know, armed, door to door, and they're going to start making things really, really uncomfortable for us at that stage. And, you know, like I said, I would really, really recommend, I'm speaking especially to our local branch of the Victoria Police, please do not come to my door, okay? Because some of the people who hold, you think that you've got it tied up because you think that you'll be controlling the Australian press at that time. Well, so what if you control the Australian press, because some of this dead man switch information has actually been given to members of the international press as well, okay? So it really doesn't matter. If you completely clamp down on all, you know, whatever, and you can't go blaming me then for saying, oh, well, the forest is burning down, oh dear, what do we do? Oh, it's all Guineith Isaacs' fault. No, it's your fault for throwing a cigarette bush into the Chinaman bush. A cigarette butt into the Chinaman bush. It's your fault. You're the one who threw the cigarette butt. I was just sitting there working beside you, trying to mind my own business, you know, and I warned you, please don't throw your butts into the Chinaman bush. And you threw the butt into the Chinaman bush, and now you're complaining because the forest is burning down around us. You know, it doesn't matter to me. I'm a Christian. I'm going to go to heaven. I'm going to sit next to Jesus, and I'm going to watch from on high as all this happens, okay? But, you know, I want to live a long life. I really do. But when God made me, he did not make a coward. And my family background, my ancestor was, you know, well, he wasn't William Wallace's uncle, but William Wallace's uncle's third cousin. That sounds convoluted. William Wallace, his father died when he was a boy. Okay, this is Braveheart. And his uncle adopted him. And he raised him up and he taught him how to make war. Okay, that was the Earl of Lindsay. After Wallace was executed and hung, drawn and quartered, the Earl of Lindsay was also executed. And his whole family down to the second cousin, okay? His third cousin, after everybody else in the family had been executed, he didn't sit in a corner and cry and whinge and complain and moan about that. He went straight to the hall of the family, and he took the family seat, and he said, we're still not going to bow to the English. And that's a true story, and it's from history. And anyone who studies the history of the Lindsay/Crawford family will find out that what I've said is true. You know, that's just how it happened. You didn't. That's not an ancestry of cowards. Okay, I'm quite aware that this could all end up very, very, very badly for me on a physical level. I'm well aware of that. But all that I'm saying is, if it does, then it's going to end up even being worse for them, okay? Because of what they have done to me, and all the details are going to be released if anything happens to me. And what am I going to do if I'm dead on the floor of a police cell somewhere? You know, I'm not going to be able to stop the people that I've given this information to from releasing it. And they're going to be so angry, they're going to release it when they hear what's happened to me. Because guess what? I've actually got friends, because I'm actually a nice person. The reason why you haven't seen me being a nice person around you is because you've spent the whole time that I've been here trespassing on my land, threatening to come to my house in the middle of the night, basically trying to rig up false charges against me, stuff that is absolutely not true, you know, and it was just by the grace of God and, you know, of him showing me what to do, that I'm not, you know, in a really bad situation right now. It's, you've been a total, I can't even say the word, a totally evil person to me. What do you expect me to have an attitude towards you like? Do you expect me to kiss and bow and, you know, grovel at your feet or something? I'm not going to do that, okay? But I want to be left alone. I want just to have a life on this earth. That's what I want, okay? And, you know, the best thing for you to do, the best thing for everyone to do, is just to let everybody alone, okay? And here's another thing. Everybody hates it when bad things happen to them. I'm not going to go out and do anything to anyone because you know why? Because I actually have empathy. And you might be the worst person on the whole earth. But I say, well, you know, I wouldn't like it if someone did that to me. Even if I was in the wrong, I still wouldn't like it. So, you know, that's called empathy. They seem to be lacking in that department. Would you agree there, Vincent? Absolutely.
You mentioned the term drawn and quartered. Would you share with our class today what that means? You being drawn
Absolutely.
And quartered?
Okay. Hung, drawn, and quartered was a traditional English method of execution, and it was generally saved for the very worst criminals. And if George Washington and his brigade had failed in what they were doing, they probably all would have been hung, drawn, and quartered. This is how you hang, draw, and quarter somebody. First of all, you get a noose and you put it around their neck and you find something that you can use as a gallows and you hang them from a tree branch or a gallows or whatever until they're almost dead, but not quite. We'll continue this on the other side. I can hear music.
Yeah, it's going to be gruesome. It's going to be gruesome, and we're going to learn what being drawn and quartered really is. You've heard the term. Now you're going to learn what it means. Guineith Isaacs. We'll be right back. Class, we're going to be talking about a form of punishment that was used in the 14th century in England. And this was done for very high crimes. And it seems that a high crime would be betraying the crown. And for these crimes, a person who committed this type of treason would be hanged, drawn, and quartered. And Guineith, please continue. What? Okay. The person is hanged almost till death, and then it seems like a great relief. He's saved.
Just before they pass out, okay, while they're still conscious, they're allowed to drop to the ground, not gently, okay? And then they are put onto a frame usually, although if a frame was not readily available, they might just get a pair of horses without a frame, and they would tie the head, tie the arms, okay, and to one horse or to one end of the frame, and tie the feet to the other end of the frame or to the other horse, okay, and then they would either get a big wheel and roll up the rope so that the person would be drawn. Either that, or they would whip both horses at once. And sometimes this actually resulted in the quartering at that time, because sometimes the horses would jump away at such an extent that the arms and legs would be ripped out. So that's why they came to use the frame instead of the two horses after a while, because they found that it was more reliable, and the horse might be hooked up to the wheel on the frame to pull the body upwards and downwards at the same time, so that they would they'd be stretched. And after that had been happening for however long, the person would they would begin the quartering. And the drawing, okay, the other part of the drawing was after they had, done the stretching for a time. What they would do is they would get the person's body and they would put it on a table, okay, and they would, first of all, castrate them if they were male. If they were female, sometimes they would cut off the breast, and they would slowly cut the stomach open and pull out the intestines slowly. When there was no more intestines left, and remember, I think there's 20 or 30 or 40 meters or something like that of intestines in the human body, so that's going to take a while if you do it slowly. Then they would cut the legs off one by one, and then they would cut the arms off one by one, and then they would cut the head off. And that's what they did to William Wallace.
And the final act of cutting the head off was mercy, right? I mean, after all this absolute torture. And my understanding is that this was done as a public spectacle, where there were people who would watch this, and then they would preserve the body parts and bring them around the countryside so people would see all over that this had happened, as a warning. Whatever you do, you don't want to go through what that guy went through. So that was the warning by the Crown. Is that right?
In Wallace's case, it had the reverse effect. They sent the body parts all over Britain, and it actually drew people out of every corner of Britain against Edward I and his men. It worked more badly for them.
Guineith Isaacs and I will be... Guineith Isaacs and I will be right back, and we're going to see if we can clean up this delay a little bit during the commercial break. This is USA Prepares. We'll be right back. Everyone all set, cocked, locked? Hour number 2 of USA Prepares. Guineith Isaacs is with us. Guineith, we've been talking about the blue team, and at the top of the hour news, there was a story about Albany, and there's been a spate of 13 shootings in the last 7 days, since July 3rd, and it's very unsettling. So the police are asking for cooperation from the public in the efforts to solve the shootings, which are unsolved at this point. And the police they've lamented the lack of cooperation by the public in their effort to solve these shootings. Now, this is from an article the dailygazette.com or dailygazette.com. So what's happening is there were some shootings, and the police want the help of, the public, and the public is not all that interested in helping the police. Yeah. Gee,
I wonder why.
And well, that's the point, and that's why I mentioned this. I used to get calls from an organization called the Police Association, and they would say, we'd like you to give money to help the police, and this was several years ago, and I'd say, the police, are those the guys that have these these cars, these unmarked cars? They park in parking lots. They go to used automobile and truck parking lots, and they hide their police vehicles so you can't see them in the parking lot, and they shoot their radar guns at passers-by in their vehicles, sniping at them. Are those the guys that you're asking me to give money to? Is that what you're saying? And, it's really nice because I don't have to hang up on them. They hang up on me.
Yeah. It's really funny that you go trespassing on people's land, threatening them, especially threatening to come around to the house in the middle of the night, especially when they're women with children that don't have a man around. You go extorting money out of them on the side of the road when they're just going to get their groceries or feed for their animals or whatever. You do all this stuff against ordinary people in the community who are not criminals, and then when you need their help, they won't help you. Gosh, I wonder why. I can't figure that out, Vincent. And I'll tell you what the funny thing was. Okay, I'm actually going to name these cops in this broadcast. I'm going to make them famous. Okay, their names are called David Becker. That was the newbie that I was talking about. And Peter Halpin. And Peter Halpin, the first time that he came onto my property, it was actually to inform me that Victoria Police had found some backpacks of mine in the state forest. And if anyone wants to know the backstory about that, just go onto their favourite search engine and type in something like $20,000 worth of jewels found at Eildon, Victoria. And they'll come up with, the press reports that were released back in the day. I kid you not. That was my Get Started Again fund. And, somebody, it's kind of a long story. I'll tell it one day, but not today. He came onto my property and he said, I went to my standard response when I see police on my land, which is get off my land. And often I'm so angry, I can't think of anything else to say other than get off my land, but that's good enough. And I said that to him, and he held his hands up, and he said, no, I'm not here for a bad purpose today. And I should have known then that I was looking at a bad egg. And I'll always remember that. He said, no, I'm not here for a bad purpose today. We've found your stuff. Words to that effect. And, we've found your things. We found your stuff. And I said, and then it came out that they'd actually recovered my backpacks with the precious stones, and I had a small amount of bullion in there, and it was all intact, and it was all returned to me, and I was very, very grateful to the Victoria Police for returning my stuff intact. But just the way that he said on that day, I'm not here for a bad purpose today. These people know that they're willingly evil. They know they're evil. And he demonstrated that on that day. Peter Halpin is his name. He's one of the senior officers at Wedderburn. And David Becker, who is a newbie. I've never seen him before. that it wasn't Peter Halpin that signed the form the other day in the middle of my driveway. It was David Becker. What a coward! Peter Halpin, just man up. If you're gonna commit your extortionate, treasonous BS on my property, why don't you just put your name on the fake warrant instead of getting your junior officer to do it, your assistant sergeant? You know, what a low, pathetic heap of cow manure. Obviously, that's about the politest thing I can say on air, Vincent. You know what I mean?
Yes, I do, and I was going to say, tell us how you really feel. So, Gwyneth, it's really simple. Yeah. You just want to be left alone. Simple as that. I just want to be left alone. I'm not a criminal. I'm this lady with big hair who lives out in the forest. I've got my children because we've been stalked by a pedophile cartel for years, and I just want to raise my kids in peace. I want to grow vegetables. I want to, have, the nopal prickly pear type of cactuses. I want to, ride my horse around from time to time, and I want to read cards and help people and, basically potter. That's what I want to do. I've got a question for you. You mentioned the phrase, don't have a man around. And what you're saying is there are women who don't... I'm a
widow.
Yes. And here's why I'm asking. Widows, ladies who don't have a man around, I have a feeling what you're saying is they're more vulnerable, and I'll tell you why I'm saying that. I'd like you to flesh out with more detail what we're talking about. We know this family down the road from us, and the husband died. He was in his 80s, and he died. And the widow had her sons move in. And the idea was they did not want to leave mom alone with no man around because they thought that mom would be taken advantage of in many different ways. So they wanted to make sure that didn't happen. So the boys moved back home. And so these boys are, well, mom is in her 80s, so the boys are, sufficiently grown, that's for sure. And they think that it's necessary. And you mentioned that women who don't have a man around. Is that why?
It's really a reality around here that the corrupt Victoria police, and they're all corrupt here. There's no good cops around here at all. There might be 8 or 10 of them here in the local district, and none of them are any good. The woman that I know that are being, obviously they're all women. I don't know any men who are being harassed by these people. They seem to have certain people that get targeted, that find their way onto their target list for whatever reason. And usually they're just ordinary people going around minding their business, wanting to live in the country because maybe they've got some sort of trauma or other that they're trying to get over. Usually that's the backstory, or because they're on various government payments and it's viewed as being an inexpensive place to live because the mortgage is lower or whatever, or the rent is lower, or they can actually afford to buy land and this sort of thing. You know how it goes, Vincent. But because they are a single mother or a single woman, the local police find out about it and they say, oh, here's another one for our target list, And it could be something as simple as they pull the woman over and, she's got the kid in the car on the way to the daycare and they say, oh, you got a broken taillight, here's a $300 infringement notice. Have a nice day. What sort of opinion does that build in the community of you as a policeman when you can see this woman's driving a beat-up car, she's got a toddler in the seat beside her sucking its dummy or whatever, or having its little sippy cup. She's obvious. She's got lines around her face. She's obviously experienced a great deal of stress in her life. Maybe there's another couple of kids in the back too. There's no obvious man around. And, they just, here's, you got a broken taillight. We'll just have a look through your vehicle while we're here. Is this your car? Would you mind if we check the VIN, please? Oh, your rego's expired. Oh, well, we'll have to take the plate.
Let's talk more about
it
this.
It expired last week because, you didn't have the money to pay it. What sort of opinion does that build among the general population of you as human beings?
Let's talk more about that when we come back. We're going into a break. So today's discussion is about the blue team, and class, we've talked about this. We've talked about how the police stop us, they hunt us, they snipe us, they push us around, and then they demand our respect. and that's
the funniest thing. Actually, something. I was actually, I just finished writing an open letter. I'm going to publish it on my Steam It page, but I'm also going to send it directly to our local blue team, okay? Probably tomorrow. And you know something? That was exactly the word I used. I said, you think that everybody respects you, but that's the kind of respect that comes from fear. And if you scratch that kind of respect just below the surface, you find anger and you find hate just beneath the surface of that. And it happens every time. It's not anything new or novel. Every time when tyrants appear on this earth and start pushing the ordinary people around, you have to see, Mr. Police Officer, you're the tyrant, okay? We're not doing anything wrong. We're just trying to live our lives. We're going to the grocery store. We're getting feed for our animals. We're taking our kids to soccer, or we're, going to the playgroup or whatever when you come and ruin our day. Okay? Of course that's going to create a bunch of anger and a bunch of hatred, And you might think that everybody respects you in your fancy uniform, but Jesus Christ had something to say about that. He said, "Woe unto you, Pharisees." The Pharisees were the law enforcement of their day. They really were. So you make your phylacteries broad. Well, what's a phylactery? It's a hat band. Basically, you love your big fat hat bands on your big fat hats with the fancy badge at the front. That's what phylactery means. It means a hat band with a badge at the front, a police hat. And you love your uniform, your garments, your tassels, all the fancy things that you get to wear. You love them, And you love the greetings in the marketplaces. Hello there, officer. How are you today? You don't see that all of that is fake. Nobody likes you anymore, Mr. Police Officer, because you have spent so many years extorting money out of us, threatening us, not investing crimes properly when we do, and then accusing us of stuff that we haven't done, And usually it's the most innocent, best and nicest of us that you're worst to. And even the people that you don't do the stuff to get to hear about it, because when stuff like this happens to people, especially women, they talk. They tell everyone. They tell everyone that they know. And so the whole community gets to find out what you did to Mrs. Jones, the divorcee, when she was taking her children to play centre, to their play date, of how you gave her a $300 fine, and about how, you threatened to, bring the families department into it when she objected, and yada, 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 which is exactly the sort of stuff that they pull all the time, And you know that, Vincent, right?
Yeah, let me share a story. I've mentioned this during my 7 years behind the microphone, but it ties in exactly with what you're saying. So we moved to Missouri from Virginia, and we'd make the weekly 40-mile round trip to the bank. And we would make deposits, withdrawals, those kinds of things. And this is kind of an interesting story. It actually dovetails with what Guineith and I have been talking about. And when we come back after this break, I'll tell you the story. And the question is this the same thing that's happening in your neck of the woods? So here we are, and we're going to be talking about my banking experience. And by the way, Nathan, are we connected? Yeah, I believe we are. Yep. I'm looking at the meters. Everything looks good. Okay. So we moved into Missouri, and we established a banking relationship. The bank was about 40 miles round trip from our farm, and we'd make the weekly visits to the bank. And it was not any specific day, but we'd show up and do our transactions and leave. And then one day, after about a decade of doing this, the gal behind the in the window, if you will, the teller said to me, "Vincent, we don't see you very often anymore. Why?" And I said, "Well, let me tell you." I said, "Let me tell you this way. So when we lived in Virginia, the neighboring town was about 8 miles away, 16-mile round trip, and they had a gas station there. They had a doctor's office, a hairdresser, 2 hardware stores. Yes, a very small doctor's office, one-man band, a dress shop. And it was just a strip going through an old rural Virginia town. That's all it was. And a 2-lane road going through there, one coming and one going. And they got a new mayor in this little town, historic town of maybe 300 people at the most. And the new mayor decided that the people were speeding through her town, and she was going to put a stop to it. So they took some money from the treasury and hired a part-time cop. They got him a part-time radar gun. They got him a police cruiser, and he set up shop. And the speed limit through town was 25 miles an hour. Anyone doing 26 or higher got a ticket. And he sniped. And he was very effective. And I had a very dear friend who is no longer with us. And he was the wealthiest man in the county. This town was in the county. He was a self-made man. And he learned that it's a good thing to avoid interest. It's a good thing to pay your bills with cash. And so he started a trucking business. Grew up to about 13 tractor trailers. And then that's when I met him. And he asked me to help him and automate his business. So we built a computer network for him. We trained him how to use it. This was back in the early 90s. As a matter of fact, he was our first computer customer. So we automated his business, taught him. It was a family business. And he grew very quickly. He needed the power of computing to launch his business. He grew up to over 100 tractor trailers. And the way from his business, which was on a very rural road, to the main highway was through this little town. And they just clicked and clicked and clicked that radar gun. And he got so many tickets for 26 miles per hour with these tractor trailers that he decided that he was going to find an alternative way to the highway. So he took his business elsewhere. So these truck drivers who would stop in and, get fuel and go to the hardware store and, get their hair cut and, grab a bite to eat and all those little things stopped.
Yep.
Because he felt that, man, this is, couldn't they give him a break? 26 miles per hour in a 25 mile an hour zone? Really? So he was the guy who paid for the parades. He's the guy who gave the big donations. He just said, okay, I get it. If you're going to do this,
I'm going elsewhere.
Yeah. And he just stopped his donations. And so the town literally lost half of its businesses. They closed.
Wow.
And the farm supply used to put a sign. The farm supply in this little town was the first business that you would see coming into town. It was just like on the very edge of town. And he would have a marquee where he would say, we have mulch on sale, we have tomato cages on sale, we have whatever it was that, the announcement of the day would be on his sign. And he would put Barney's on duty. Slow down, meaning Barney Fife from Andy of Mayberry. Okay, Barney's on duty. And he was telling people, he was warning them that this cop was sniping. Well, it literally
famous.
Yes, it literally killed the entire town. Okay?
Yeah.
And it has not come back. Now, so people remember. So this stupid mayor who hires this part-time cop with a part-time radar gun and a police cruiser, they bring in revenue and they drive everybody out of town. So how does this relate to the banking, where the teller behind behind the counter said to me, Vincent, we don't get to see you very often. And I said, so you know that big hill that we come down and we go into town. You know that big hill, and the speed limit is 55. And then all of a sudden it goes to 30. And then just past the point where you can see the police car hides with his radar gun, that part-time cop that you guys have. Well, I have this trailer. And when I come into town and buy fuel, or if I go to the hardware store, or if I come to the bank, or I come to the tire shop, as I come down with my trailer, there's some bumps in the road. And it goes bump, 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 bump. And I didn't put those bumps there. But I know that even though I check my tail lights on the trailer and all the lights around the trailer and the connector to the truck, my little pickup truck, I know that there's a possibility that my tail light, the filament might burn out. When I'm stepping on the brake, the light is illuminated and I hit those bumps. So I think that it would be a bad thing to come to town and risk that multiple $100 fine for having a taillight out. That used to work before I hit the bumps that are put there by the highway department. So, and that speed limit that goes from 55 to 30 instantly, and if I'm coming down this big hill and I'm doing 31, I don't want to get that ticket. So, I don't come to town very often. And I talked to one of the guys in town a couple days ago. He has a tire shop, and I hired him to come fix a 6-foot tractor tire for me. And he has a special machine that dismounts it. I don't have that machine. It's a very expensive machine to break the bead on one of these big tires. And he has his tire shop in town. And he said, Vincent, and he lives in the same town I do. He travels the 40-mile round trip to go to his tire shop. And he has a farm near us. He said, Vincent, what happened to our little town is they got that guy with the radar gun, and he gave so many tickets to so many people that they decided they're not coming to town, which is the same story that I told the banker. Same story.
Yep.
And he said, and they got rid of that guy. They got rid of that cop. He's not there anymore. But people don't know that, and they remember that guy was sniping, and it stuck. And to this day, people don't come to town. The restaurant closed. The gas station closed. Businesses are boarded up. They've been out of business for years. And he said, here's what happened, Vincent. They're not coming back. They've already found another tire shop. They've already found another. The hardware store shut down. The restaurant closed. The town, and this is the courthouse. This is where you go to pay your bills. This is where you go to register deeds. If you're in the county, sometimes you have to go to this town. People avoid it like the plague because the mayor hired a part-time radar-wielding sniper.
Good.
It killed the businesses. Now, it killed it 1,100 miles away in Virginia, and it killed it right here in Missouri. It's the same story. The same stupid mayors. The same stupid egos.
It absolutely is. It absolutely is. And, you know, the stupid thing is it's the municipality and the police, you know, and their carry-on, their red tape and their regulations and their Department of Agriculture and the RSPCA and the dog ranger and all the rest of it is the reason why we have a 25% unemployment rate around here, which is permanent, more or less. It's the reason why people are going out of keeping sheep, they're going out of keeping goats and chickens, and, you know, they're going out of all of these sorts of things. Either that or they're going into the black or the grey market, okay? What they're doing is only making the black market and the grey market for livestock and chickens and all the rest. These are not stolen chickens, okay? The police and stolen sheep. I mean, far out. Who steals a chicken? No one, okay? People don't do that around here, okay? They just don't. You know, there might be the occasional one, but usually they don't live very long because the farmers have all got guns. And if they catch anyone just loading stock onto a truck, they're gonna inflict Rule 303 or Rule 22. You know what I mean?
For those of you who don't know those rules, those are calibers. An Enfield battle rifle was chambered in .303, and
small, quite a popular caliber.
Yes, they are, and you can go to a gun show and buy an Enfield .303 bolt action, absolutely, and they're available right here in the United States as well. And Rule 22, I love that terminology, Rule 303 and Rule 22. In our neck of the woods, it would be Rule 223 or Rule 556 or Rule 300 Weatherby. We'll be right back. I have been approved, accepted, and I am now a candidate again for the board of directors of the Electric Cooperative. Why? Because I got enough signatures on the petition for me to become a candidate for the board of directors. And I'm all excited. You know, I'm going to get a chance to get on stage again and use my 2 minutes. I get 2 minutes. I get 2 minutes in which time I have to convince 1,000 people at least. There'll be about 2,000 in attendance, but 1,000 of them are voters, and they get a chance to pick whether they want to re-elect the same guys who have been raising their electric bills for years. 8 rate increases in 15 years. They get a chance to re-elect those same people, or they can try somebody new who has 2 minutes to convince them that maybe they should give him a chance. That would be me. So I'm going to be on stage in August at the Electric Cooperative annual meeting. Some people might call it a circus. They give out prizes, and they have a band, and they waste an extraordinary amount of money doing that, in my opinion. Now, some people might think that the $65,000 that they spend, providing hot dogs, potato chips, a cookie, 2 light bulbs, and soda, having the band play, and giving out TVs and prizes is worth $65,000. I think it can be done for far less. I rented that same hall for a weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, in Lebanon, Missouri, and I was able to do it for 1/20th of the cost. Amazing.
Wow.
Amazing. So I'm looking forward to being on stage, and I'll probably lose again. This will probably be my 3rd loss in a row, because what happens is they do 2 things. They take pictures of the candidates, and some candidates have been rerunning so many times that they use pictures of 20 years ago. And these guys, you wouldn't recognize these people from their pictures, that they post. The other thing is they allow people to vote before the candidates speak. Amazing. Mm-hmm. Amazing. So
wow. How does that work?
I don't know. Well, I'll tell you what, it doesn't work too well in terms of sharing information. So I'm going to send some suggestions to the CEO, and I'd already gave him one suggestion yesterday when he congratulated me. I said, hey, how about having the voting early? You know, because what happens is the people show up and they want their prizes, and they want to hear the band. And then, you know, 2/3 of the way through the night's events, then the candidates get a chance to speak. I said, no, let's have the candidates speak first before you give away any TVs and prizes. Okay? Have the candidates speak first, and then you allow the voting, not before. Well, I think they're going to take that under consideration. Can you imagine a system whereby you have the candidates vote before, you have the voters, the members vote before the candidates speak? Unbelievable.
Wow, that's amazing. It really, really is. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But like I say, it all goes back to the same thing. It's run ultimately by a bureaucracy, and if they'll just let people do their own stuff, people would deal with their own electrical supplies. They really would.
You do, and I do.
It would just be the way that things were, and it would all happen. And people would either have electricity or they wouldn't. And, you know, you wouldn't have this whole bureaucracy, you wouldn't have this three-ring circus. And, you know, you just, everybody would be able to live their lives, and I'm sure that people would be a lot happier.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Hey, Guineith, thanks so much. And please keep in touch if your situation becomes more perilous. And let me know.
Absolutely.
Let the other broadcasters who know you know about it, and we'll ring the alarm.
Okay. Yep, no, that's great.
Thanks so much for being
God
with us.
bless and have a great week, won't you?
God bless.